Do some of your plants look brown and dead following the extreme cold temperatures that we've had in the past couple of weeks? I'm Peter Grimaldi. I'm the Vice President of Gardens and Facilities at Cheekwood, and we're going to put this freeze event, the damage that it created, into a bit of context and also turn your frown upside down. So I'd like for you guys to remember 3 things. Number 1, with respect to damage to broadleaf evergreens, which is what we're most concerned about, such as these Distilleum and hollies behind me, the best thing to do is be patient. Relax for a minute and wait, and let's let Mother Nature play its course. Because the question is, how far into the plant and through its different tissues and through its different ages of tissues did this frost damage get? And for that, we're going to need some time. Wait until March, April, perhaps even later to make final decisions on the plant material in your garden. In some cases, it may not require much more management than cleaning the brown and fallen leaves up off of the ground. But remember too, that dropping leaves is a process that actually requires energy from the plant, right? To sever and drop a leaf, the plant has to build little rows of cells and abscise that leaf. That requires energy, and these plants aren't doing a whole lot right now in the middle of the winter time. So most of this recovery is going to happen in the springtime when the juices start flowing again and they're even pushing new foliage. We've established that our broadleaf evergreens are the area of greatest concern, and this is Osmanthus, a variety of Osmanthus behind me in the Japanese garden, which is supposed to be evergreen. As you can see, it is not very green at all, completely denuded of foliage. And to check, if you're not the most patient person in the world, just like myself, is you're scratching with your thumbnail or a sharp knife, and you're nicking buds and looking for some level of resistance for green at the base of the bud attachment on the stem, and moving down the stem to scratch, feeling for a firm, supple stem, some flexibility, and looking for those moist green layers in the stem. Now, we say patient because, let's say, for example, that this plant is catastrophically and irreparably harmed by the freeze. Well, it's going to take a couple weeks for this to play out from an event that just happened on December 23rd. Number 2, your hellebores and herbaceous perennials for the most part are fine, so don't worry about it. Most of the herbaceous perennials in the ground are insulated by the ground layer. In the case of the hellebores, insulated by their own foliage. And so if you're tired of looking at that foliage, which was probably getting a little unsightly already, then go ahead and initiate your winter or spring cleanup routine. Clip it back, add your compost, mulch, and boom, you're ready for the spring. So again, not too worried about the herbaceous perennials. Number 3, use it as an opportunity to evaluate the plants in your garden and maybe cull out some invasive or plants that are less friendly to wildlife, such as Nandina. At Cheekwood, we're going to use this as an excuse to look critically at all of our Nandina throughout the property and probably get rid of quite a bit of it. And then lastly, I'd like just to talk about what does this mean for gardening in Middle Tennessee in the future, right? And should I select different plant material for my garden if we're going to have such extreme temperatures? And to that, I'll say you're just going to have to find a nice balance in your own space and make informed decisions. When you talk about hardiness zones and the USDA hardiness zones and whether a plant is adapted to live in a certain area, those zones are determined by average annual low temperature, which doesn't necessarily capture an extraordinary event like we had just a couple weeks ago. You know, one night of 5 degrees over a mild Middle Tennessee winter is not going to move the needle, so to speak, and necessarily drive us into a colder hardiness zone. So going back in with some of the same varieties is going to represent a certain amount of risk. Think about the last time that you had the similar experience in your garden and whether the enjoyment and the useful service life you got out of these plant selections in your garden was worth it. If you want to play a little bit safer, then you might want to start looking at some of the more needled evergreens, native evergreens that are better adapted for these extreme cold temperatures.